Welcome to the West Canada Valley Board of Education meeting Monday, March 14th. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a couple of special presentations. So first off tonight, introducing Sandra Sherwood, our district superintendent for Boces. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us tonight. Congratulations to your boys. I know they didn't win Saturday, but it sounded like it was a great game. And with the snowstorm coming in, I kept watching because Janine was all over it at our meeting on Thursday. So sounds like a great game. So I did give you the budget handout, and what I'm going to present actually walks right through the handout. So it might be easier for you to see the numbers on in the booklet. So thank you for having us. Steve Coop, our business official, I believe is en route, but also with me tonight is Jim Piccola, our assistant superintendent. And this budget presentation is going to lead right into a presentation on the proposed capital project that is slowly marching forward after all these years. So thank you. So tonight I'm going to be mostly talking about the administrative budget. That is the budget that you vote on April 20th. I'll try to remember to tell you what all the pictures are as we go through. That is our conservation class with their teacher, Mr. Carpenter. They were doing a logging project, which is fairly evident. So as we go through, I'll talk about the kids and talk about the programs. So the Boces administrative budget has 5 main parts, and I'm going to walk through each part. There's Board of Ed, District Superintendent, Central Admin, Business Admin, and then transfer charges. And all of that combined for a proposed $1.321 million. But then we have to add in those post-employment healthcare costs, the post-retirement costs. And that's another 2.3. So the bulk of our administrative budget is actually post-employment health insurance. So we will talk about that also as we go through. As we go through each part of the budget, please, if you have any questions, ask me as we go through. This particular picture is actually our Child and Family Services. We run a preschool right at the web a couple days a week so that the high school students get to practice with real children. So the first part of the budget, which would be page 3 of the booklet, is the Board of Education. We have a 10-member board with 1 member representing each of the 10 components. Board of Ed budget hasn't changed a great deal. The one line that I'll point out to you about halfway down is audit legal, and you'll see it's making quite a jump. That's because there's recently been an announcement that Boces will need to have an internal auditor, which we've never been required to have. That is something I'm actually fighting at the state level because the statute doesn't mention Boces. And so just like with the grants and the federal programs, if it doesn't mention Boces, Boces doesn't get it. So you can't take the things that actually cost people money and say, well, that does apply to Boces. So we're actually arguing that point, but we did build into the audit legal line in case we do have to actually have an internal auditor. So that's really the only big change here. Otherwise, there's a little bit of salary in here, so you'd have a little bit of benefits associated also. District Superintendent's actually pages 4 and 5 in the booklet. This is essentially my salary and my secretary's. This one you do see a big increase, and that's because I let my board know that I plan to retire at the end of September in 2023, and I've taken a pay freeze for 2 years, and it's actually now compromised us a little bit because our salary is falling behind the other Boces. So they're going to do the maximum increase that's allowed under the New York State regulation for this July and then the following July in hopes of becoming somewhat competitive. This coming July, 22 of the 37 Boces across the state will be at the new cap. They just raised it about 3 years ago, and we're significantly below that. And the state has very strict guidelines on how that gets increased, so the board is going to be as aggressive as they can for the next year and a half, but won't get us quite up there. Partway down though, the retirement cost you'll see actually go down. That's because last year, or well, actually this current year, the second year of the pay freeze, they did do a 403B contribution, so we're taking that contribution back out to help offset the salary increase. Any questions on this? Oh, this picture is actually, I had the privilege of serving lunch on opening day to the staff at Pathways. And next to me is the assistant principal, David So, and next to him is principal Pathways, Pat Corrigan. So really nice team over there at Pathways. Central administration, so this is all kinds of different offices, mostly housed at German Street, that serve the entirety of Boces instead of just maybe serving CTE, alt ed, special ed. So again, there aren't big changes in this. We have a little bit of an insurance increase. Every year we have to look at every position and make sure they're apportioned correctly between the different program budgets and central admin. So there's always a little bit of shifting here. But the two biggest money increases are actually the general liability insurance going up and consultants going up, and that's pretty much a training line. This picture is Youth Summit, which we host every year. And this last September or October was actually in person. The year before was virtual. So it was nice to have all those high school students back together. The students planned the Youth Summit, and this year their theme, not surprisingly, was mental health. And so they brought in speakers around mental health, and then they're taking back projects into their districts to work on the mental health with their peers. So that's a partnership we have with Catholic Charities. Business administration is the next part of the admin budget. This is the actual central business office. I shouldn't say it that way. It's the business office for the central Boces. It is not what you might buy into if you were doing payroll or accounts payable in the central business office. So this is actually the Boces side of the business affairs. We do have some changes here because we're shifting some programs out of our central business office as well as our business office. So we have some staff coming into the main business line, and we have others that are retiring and we're not replacing them. So there is some changes here. One of the big changes you can see is in the health insurance, because we will be doing, at least hiring replacing one of the people who are leaving. We have to figure that it would be a family health insurance plan, which is over $22,000 now. So that's the big increase in health insurance, is factoring in an additional insurance in that line. This picture, as you can probably tell, is our heavy equipment program, where the kids go out and move around dirt and stones and all kinds of things. And this time of year, usually a lot of snow removal too, all part of their training. Transfer charges is the strangest part of the Boces budget. It's a part that you don't have in a school budget. This is where we have to look at the expenses of that central office and allocate our share of the telephone, of computer support, and all of those kind of things. Because obviously that's part of the expenses of running a central office, a business office, and my office. So this is those. You can see 2 years ago the big change was that we had to, in order to put money into the TRS, that was a brand new reserve allowed 4 years ago, we had to move money into admin and then pay it out of the admin. So that $195,000 from 2 years ago was only using leftover federal money that was allowed to go into the TRS. And under statute, we had to transfer it into this budget in order to pay it out of this budget. Otherwise, this is a fairly stable, our costs don't go up by too much on any given year. So that is the entirety of the main admin budget, which is, like I said, $1,321,938 is what's proposed for next year. Those students are our outdoor power equipment. They're actually working on a motorcycle. That's a group of kids that get so engrossed, whether they're working on a motorcycle or a snowmobile or an ATV, they rarely know that any adults are around them because they are totally focused on whatever's going on in that vehicle. So the big cost driver of our admin budget is our post-employment health costs. So this is the retiree health costs. And these are the health insurance costs, not just of retired admins, even though it's in the admin budget. It's all retirees from Boces. So several years ago, the superintendents, we had a conversation about moving this up so that more of those retiree health care costs are in the admin budget that you get aid on. So we've been slowly bringing more and more into this. And as you can see, with this current proposal, the post-employment insurance is actually 63% of the total admin budget is just that post-employment health insurance. So, and we'll keep bringing it over because it is to the district's benefit to get those health insurance costs in here where you get maximum aid. So we're gonna keep bringing them over. Right now, the amount we're proposing, the $2,307,000 is, makes up over 67% of our total post-retirement costs. So we are getting close to probably around 75% will be the point where you're getting maximum aid. So we'll keep working on that. That picture is actually our VP Tech students involved in a math problem that they're working through a solution. So that's the total admin budget. Once you add in your post-retirement is the $3,629,928 total admin. So then just a reminder that a lot of the Boces costs are built on our WADA, which is a resident-weighted average daily attendance. It's not strictly enrollment, but it's certainly tied to enrollment. So you can see West Canada Valley, this current school year, if you think of the Boces costs as pie, you are paying 7.78% of the Boces pie. Next year, given the numbers that you submitted to the state, you'll pick up a little bit more, you'll be 7.85%, but pretty stable. Your Boces level of contribution is pretty stable. That picture is actually our advanced manufacturing students who are working on some pretty high-tech equipment in advanced manufacturing, which is part of our P-Tech program currently. We gave you a page that kind of goes through the our WADA administrative and capital charges. These are projections as far as the capital charges go. The only budget that we can present to you for vote is the administrative, because everything else depends on what districts ask for. We could have a decline in enrollment and not need to lease some space, in which case capital would go down. We might have increased enrollment and need to lease more space, in which case capital goes up. So that's, like all of our program budgets, it's very fluid throughout the year. So this just kind of gives you an overview of where you are. You will see though that we do have more capital budget. You'll see that there is a rent increase, which actually Mr. Picola will be talking about renting some additional space in order to get some adult programs out of our other buildings, because there's a need for more pre-K to 12 programs. And we can't build space, but we can free up space. So Mr. Picola, when he presents the proposed capital project, he'll give you a good sense of that. And I guess on that, I'll pause for a minute, see if there are any questions. So very quickly, those pictures, we have our criminal justice kids learning how to safely and respectfully make an arrest. We have in the upper right, the nursing program. This is our health occupations, not our LPN. They get in a colloquium where they problem solve around some symptoms and diagnoses. And then down in the middle, we have a student who's displaying one of her visual communications projects that she's doing for a company, a local company. So the dates to remember, we will have one more virtual annual meeting. Hopefully next year we'll be in person and have the students making dinner and all of the things that really help us celebrate what a Boces does and what a Boces is. But this year it will be virtual one more time. We are asking every board to have at least one member join us via Zoom, and others can join via live stream. That way we can do the vote to accept the annual minutes from the previous meeting. Our host this year is Poland, and they will be having a student artwork on display before and after the actual meeting. And then our community partner award is going to ICANN. It was previously known as Kids Oneida and then Kids Herkimer. Now they're ICANN, and they're a tremendous partner with the social emotional needs of students, providing psychiatric nursing. One of the nice things about their program is they work not just in the classroom, but they actually go into the homes and work with the families, which is a tremendous help to many of our students. So they're our community partner award. And then the vote, as I said at the beginning, is Wednesday, April 20th on the administrative budget and the election of 4 board members. And you have one of the 4 open seats. So we're hoping that West Canada Valley will nominate someone who maybe wears a lot of purple, I'll just say. But we also have Herkimer, O&D Young, and Central Valley seats. So this year we have 4 board seats up, each for a 3-year term. So this is our big year. Usually we only have 3. So we look forward to your nomination and then the election. Any further questions? Okay. Then I'll turn it over to Mr. Capella.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is yours.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jim McCall, the Assistant Superintendent at the Boces. We'll be working off of 2 documents, primarily the PowerPoint, and then there's a supplemental that we'll use at the point. So a brief history of what brings us to the need for a project now. Starting with the Remington building, it was built in 1977 by the Ilion School District, with additions to the building in 1990 and 2001. A significant renovation in 2010 by the Ilion School District. They vacated the building in 2013. When with the merger, Boces took over the building in 2013, so it was consistently occupied. Many of you may recall in 2017 we proposed a renovation project to that building, but with the transition of leadership in the region, and there was some trepidation about Boces renovating a building it didn't own, so we backed away from that project. We did buy the building in 2020 and currently own it at this time. The web building, our data is a little less thorough there. It was built in 1971. At some point there was a renovation done, I don't know when, then a second renovation in 1994. In 2001 there was a significant increase proposed to the building. It was the schoolhouse on the hill. They're going to add for the alternative ed program. That proposal was defeated. In 2005 we did an energy performance project, which was HVAC, lighting, windows and storefronts primarily. In 2010 we did a renovation project that was the culinary kitchen, redoing the lobby area, and some of the other smaller projects within that. Again, in 2017 we proposed a capital improvement project for that building. We withdrew that proposal. So that brings us to today in our proposal for 2022. This will be a multi-phase, multi-year construction project, with construction hopefully closing in 2029, so we're talking a fairly lengthy project. It would be funded by one intermunicipal agreement in the cost of $60 million. I'll talk more about that in a moment. It will focus primarily on infrastructure upgrades, basic life systems, health safety systems, with about $53 million projected for that. We have budgeted for roughly $7 million worth of programmatic upgrades. However, at this time and tonight, I'm not really going to talk about those program upgrades for 2 reasons. First, the main reason is that we need to move this project along fairly quickly in terms of the life safety aspects of it. So we'll talk about the phasing of it in a moment. The program pieces are set for a later phase for 2 reasons. First, as a region, we haven't had the opportunity to do the stakeholder conversations that we need to decide what the Boces role in the future of education of the Herkimer County region is. So that is not only Boces employees and such, but it's community members, it's business owners for the CTE pieces, it's component district input. We will have an opportunity to have all of those meetings over the course of the next year as we prepare for the web construction phase. So we don't have those planned out. The second reason that we haven't planned it out is with the inflation going like this on a daily basis right now, up and down, we wanted to make sure we weren't planning and budgeting for programmatic items that we're not going to be able to achieve. Overall, as you can see, the Remington building, we're expecting $24.5 to $27.5 million. In at the web, about $32.5 million worth of work. The web is the Gross Boulevard building. The next page in your handout is actually just one page out of the supplemental handout, and only so I can speak to it briefly. This is the infrastructure scope that we're planning to work on. You'll see some placeholders for programmatic work, but they're not detailed out. It's not my intention to go line by this, but I invite you to ask any questions about any specific item if something jumps out at you. Rather, I just want to quickly make sure that you understand everything you're looking at on the page. First, the first column, obviously, phase. We are looking at a 3-phase project. Phase 1 will be primarily the Remington building. Phase 2 will primarily be the Webb building. And then phase 3 is going to be a catch-up of the Remington building. We'll talk more about why that phasing is like that in a moment. The main column that may not be totally evident to you is on the Remington pages, there's a column that says 2017. On the web pages, there's a column that says 2005, 2010, 2017. If there is an X in that box, that means we attempted to address that issue in an earlier project, but it went uncorrected. So there are items in here that in 2005, we attempted to do them, we didn't get it done. In 2010, we didn't get it done. In 2017, we didn't get it done, and now we're in 2022, hoping to get it done. What I'm often reminded in these meetings of people who've been around longer than I, that 2005 project, most of the things on there were already 15 years past to do, so to speak. So some of these items are really at end of life, critical phase for reconstruction. So again, I share this with you that there are 3 phases. I kind of color coded the phases a little bit with different sheets of paper. And if you have any questions about the scope, I'm happy to answer them. Moving on in the PowerPoint, to talk about the intermunicipal agreement. Essentially, an intermunicipal agreement is an 11-way contract of how we're going to pay for this work. It's the 10 school districts and the Boces all agreeing in a contract how to fund the project. This project, as funded the way we're discussing, would be voted on by the component school district boards. It's not a public referendum. So this vote works very much in the same way. Next month or month and a half, you'll be doing the Boces administrative vote. This project would work the same way. One board, one vote towards the capital project. The difference between the administrative budget and an IMA is the IMA has to have all 10 districts vote yes. So if even one district votes no, whether it's our smallest ODY or our largest Central Valley, if one district votes no, the project stops. So the reason that we're using an IMA versus a public referendum in DASNY funding, which is the more typical way that a project would be done, is for the last several years we've been working with the superintendent's cabinet and the business officials, and the IMA allows flexibility of how your district is going to fund the project. So what that means is you'll be making payments to Boces. Those payments will be on a set schedule defined by the IMA. But how you fund those payments is up to you. In some cases, districts are going to use a cash payment. They have cash to do it. Others are going to use short-term lending or bonds, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year bond, whatever works for your district, or even Boces refunds. With an IMA, each district can do it however it works best for them. If we had done this through public referendum in DASNY, the Boces would have borrowed the money, and likely a 15-year bond, and it would have locked all districts into that 15-year bond pattern. So that flexibility was really very important for the districts. So that's why we've chosen to go this route. So there are several things the IMA does, but I'll talk about just the most important 4. First of all, it establishes the maximum expenditure. In this case, $60 million. Again, we've been working with superintendents and business officials for about 4 years now, and that price tag of $60 million is a number they came up with and felt that their districts, their communities could support and afford and be sustainable. So they kind of developed that number. From there, we developed the project. It establishes each district's share of the cost using the RWADA method. So much like Mrs. Sherwood a few minutes ago talked about the RWADA for your district, this project will be divided up the same way. The difference between administrative budget and an IMA is that RWADA goes up and down every year based on lots of different factors with population. For the purpose of this intermunicipal agreement, the RWADA will be locked in place and will be fixed for the duration of the IMA. So whatever share is yours on day one of the project, that same share 3-5 years later will still be the same amount. Business officials love that because it makes it a lot easier for them to budget and plan. The last thing an IMA does is to set up the schedule of payments to the Boces so that we have the cash flow to fund the construction as it goes along. So this next page is where my conversation becomes a little bit incomplete tonight, although the puzzle pieces are falling in place, and I hope to have some good answers by the end of next week. When Boces bought the Remington building, we had to go through the process of, with state ed, of recalculating the building aid unit measurement. BAUs, as they're known, is how state ed decides how much money you'll get aid on in a construction project. So when Boces bought the building, because it was previously an elementary school, state ed had to recalculate it as a high school and as an alternative school. That process I started in late August, and it ended during February break. They finally came back with a number after lots and lots of go-between. So we felt like we were in pretty good shape. We prepared the paperwork for the web complex, the Gross Boulevard complex. Again, state ed came back with a number roughly half of what we were expecting in terms of aidability. And they were using some numbers that they couldn't explain, the BAU, they couldn't explain. So after some back and forth, they agreed with my interpretation and were much happier with the BAU that came back on that. So what the BAU does is it creates a maximum cost allowance for a building. And the easiest way to describe that will be with the Remington building. The Remington building, the maximum cost allowance was about $18.5 million, roughly. So what that means is anything we spend up to $18.5 million will be aided. So, 74 cents on a dollar, 80 cents on a dollar, whatever your Boces rate is, will come back to you in the form of aid. If we were to exceed that $18.5 million, it becomes total local burden, dollar for dollar, local share. So, thinking back to what we talked about with the Remington building, I said it has a estimated cost of $24.5 to $27.5 million. This is why we're breaking it into two phases. Our intention in phase one is to maximize that $18.5 million worth of work. Then in state ed, aid regenerates or becomes available again every 5 years. So we're going to do $18.5 million worth of work, wait 5 years, and then come back and do the other $5 or $6 million worth of work, so that all of it becomes aided to the districts. That seems like the most cost-efficient way that we can do that for the local burden. So, what I've shared in front of you right now is the cost share. This is the expense side of the budget. This is not the aid piece. Yes. So you'll see West Canada Valley is the top school district, and out of the $60 million, roughly 4.7 of that would be West Canada Valley's share, expense, pre-aid. We are projecting, and this is one of the things that we'll finalize in the next week, we're projecting that the districts will be making 3 payments to the Boces, one in July of 23, one in July of 24, and one in July of 28. And you can see roughly what those 3 payments would be. On the next page, so because I can't really share your exact numbers with you, and I created what I called Sample District A, working with some assumptions. First of all the expenses are going to fall within that maximum cost allowance. In the case of District A, I said it's about 10% of the Boces has an RWADA of 10%. 95% bond rate. Now what that means is any project you do, there are incidental costs that are not aidable. So our financial advisors, the BPD group, said if you use a 95% number, that's very conservative. It's usually 97, 98, 99% aidable. So by going at 95%, there's that little bit of overestimate that they like. And then I estimated it at a 74% RWADA aid ratio, Boces aid ratio. So this is not a real school district, but it is reasonably similar to several of our school districts. So how does the cash flow work? In July 23, which is fiscal year 24, this district would pay the Boces $2 million. That aid is same year aid, same year Boces aid. So even though they're paying $2 million in July, by the end of that school year, they would have a refund of approximately $1.4 million. So what I've kind of demonstrated here is this district would take that $1.4 million and apply it to the second year expense of $3 million, thus making their net cost for year 2 approximately $1.6 million. Then there's the gap between the resting years, so to speak. In 2028, the district share would be $1 million. They would actually have $2.1 million sitting in their bank account from the refund from the $3 million that they spent in 2024. So their net expense would actually be to the good of $1.1 million. They would get an additional $700,000 back on that $1 million that they spent in that same year. So basically, out of $6 million expense to this district, they would have $4.2 million in aid with an out-of-pocket expense of approximately $1.8 million. So, what have we done so far to prepare this project? So the scope that you see in front of you, the infrastructure scope, primarily developed from prior project lists, our building condition survey, and through engineering and architecture walkthroughs. We've been working with state ed to establish the BAU at Remington, to correct the BAU at the web, and to develop our maximum allowance costs, therefore helping us to phase out the project. Been working with the business officials and superintendents over the last 4 to 5 years to plan for this project to make sure it's part of their fiscal planning at the local level. And then what Sandy hinted at with the German Street building, although not part of this project, it absolutely works hand in hand with this project. We are in the process of renting about 12,400 square feet of space on the first floor of the building where the district office is currently. And we're going to use that space to move adult programming to. One of the challenges we face is because of the way we're approaching this project, we're not allowed to increase the footprint of either building at all, not by 1 square foot. But we already know we're tight on space. So the analogy I use is when you're at your house, you don't have room, you can't build more closets, so what do? You declutter your closets. That's kind of what we're going to do with our buildings. For example, at the web, we're going to take out our professional development wing, that's our instructional support. That includes leather stocking A and B. Those conference spaces and the adults that are associated with professional development, those offices, are all going to be moved over to German Street. By doing that, we're immediately going to pick up 2 spaces, leather stocking A and B, that next fall we're going to use as special education classrooms. As part of the project, I think, we haven't drawn it yet, but I think we're going to pick up at least 2 more classrooms down that hallway by freeing up and pulling those adults out of those spaces. So what we're facing right now is a shortage of classrooms in the region for special needs children. We are already projecting to be 6 classrooms short next fall. So 2 of those we're going to pick up by using leather stocking A and B. The others we'll pick up by moving the adult LPN program out of the Remington building. They currently occupy 6 classrooms that we'll be able to use for school-based students in the near future. So again, we feel it's the most cost-efficient way that we can move adults out of student spaces and use state ed approved spaces for children in the two buildings. And so that is going to be, that's how we're getting to around the idea of having to add footprint space to the buildings. By keeping students in those two buildings, it should make transportation easier because the student centers will be all in two places. It stabilizes some of our constant moving around every year, and I know transportation officials get frustrated every year. You know, classrooms get moved from district to district based on available space in the districts. So we're hoping to alleviate some of those concerns as well. So our tentative timeline is for phase one, primarily the Remington building, combine two words into one, the Remington building, for roughly $18.5 million. The district would pay the Boces in July of '23. Construction would be in the fall of '23 through summer of '24. Phase two is tentatively scheduled with a payment to the Boces in July of '24, with construction in the fall of '24 and summer of '25, for roughly $30 million. Phase three, again, it's that catch-up phase of completing the Remington building, $9 to $12 million, with a payment due to Boces in July of '28, with construction in the fall of '28 through summer of '29. Throughout all of this process, we intend to continue to occupy the buildings. We'll have to swing some students in swing space work, but the buildings will be occupied throughout all the construction. So with that, I open it up to questions. Vote timeline. So Little Falls has a unique circumstance that because they're a city school district, they have a capital debt limit that they have to deal with that central school districts don't. Little Falls actually has to have a public referendum as part of their May budget vote. Not to vote on the Boces project, but rather to vote on exceeding their capital debt limit. They're very, they feel good about that. They feel like that's going to pass without too much challenge. The intention is that that's going to happen in May, and that early June, the districts will be voting on the IMA agreement at that point, so that we can start the planning and really moving forward. What will happen is, well before then, the state ed pieces that have been holding us up will be finalized, and you will know exactly what the IMA says and what your payment timelines will be, and the estimated aid rates and all of that. You'll have all that information prior to being asked to vote on something. So with that, I offer any questions.
Jim, when do you might have just said this, the documents for us to discuss here as a board and for them to kind of look at, finalize, you're expecting them like in May, April?
So I'm expecting to have the financial pieces pretty well hammered out within the next week and a half or so.
Okay.
At that point, I'll make sure you have copies of them. And you've kind of seen those in the past, what they look like. So I'll make sure you have those. The IMA, as soon as I have the financial pieces in place, I'll be working with the attorneys to draw up the IMA. So I hope to have that, we're in March, I hope to have that in the April, mid-April, early May timeline, so that you have time to look at it, to review it, ask questions before being asked to vote on it for the June timeline.
This construction document you have is pretty much what we're looking at. You expect any changes to this in terms of dollars and cents, or?
I don't think in terms of dollars and cents. I mean, the details of,
Yep.
the nitty gritty will probably change a bit, but we are at 60 million, and it really is about keeping the lights on and the heat running in these buildings.
So between now and then, they can look at this and see what you're doing and spend some time looking at this document.
Absolutely.
And then once the financials, I can kind of correlate them.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page with that.
Yep.
Any questions? Be a lot to digest and think about.
A lot.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your time this evening.
Yes. Mr. McCollum, Mr. Sherwood, thank you so much for tonight. For your time.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Next, we're going to hear from Allen, our elementary teacher. I'm not sure if you're
Yeah, I can do it. This is Mrs. Allen. She, full disclosure, she saw that presentation already. She's a member of the Poland Board of Education, so it's her second run at
Good
that one.
times. I will tell you this, it
So
was
if you-
half the time here, so thank you.
Was it? Oh, yeah. So she got to see that twice. Mrs. Allen has attended some professional development in Albany as it relates to state testing and the development of state tests. And she's here tonight along with Mrs. Holmes to share this with us. So I thank you for coming. Thank you.
You're welcome. So don't ask why, but if you're not 10 or 11, I have a little bit of anxiety speaking out loud. So if I trip over my words or anything like that, I apologize. This is one of the things I've been doing for about 4 years now. It even was held virtually over the COVID time period when we weren't in school. But it's the New York State Department of Education partners with Questar and True North to create the state assessments, both grades 3 through 8, math and ELA, as well as all the Regents assessments that come in the high school. And we're not the only state that follows a process similar to this, but each state is altered based on their specific standards and all that jazz that the states actually get to decide on their own. So the first thing that I want you guys to know is it's from writing an item to being on a test, it's a 2-year process. So I've been doing it now where there's possibility for some of the questions I wrote or some of the questions colleagues of mine have written will be on this test this year. So it's kind of, you know, I tell my son, look out for your name. No, I'm just kidding. He's in 5th grade. But I do use names that I'm familiar with, so I think like maybe one day I'll catch it as it's coming through. But there are quite a few steps. So I actually attached for you in the back is the step-by-step test development process. And there's way too much on there. I will not go through it all. But there are about 6 of those steps that they now include New York State educators in the process. I have been able to participate in 3 of those 6 opportunities. One of them I've actually done like 4 or 5 times. So if you look on the front page, I highlighted the 3 that I was able to go to. Item writing is one that I've done multiple times. It is where let's start at the beginning, sorry. The first one is mostly ELA related. It's when they come up with what passages will go on the test and decide what standards they want to address. And that usually happens at the very beginning, probably about this time of year. After that, usually in the springtime, I actually attended this the end of February, right before we shut down. So I was like the last in-person session that they had, is when they do the item writing. And they're 3-day meetings usually. They are held regionally. So the reason I wanted to come present this to you is because typically the closest place is Albany to do these. They have been in Utica, but not in a good 3 to 4 years, since before I was doing it actually, so closer to 5. So it's free to do these professional developments, it's free to participate, but for travel, if I were to do it, to go to Albany, we would need the district support for it. So that's why I wanted to come and make sure that you were hearing what was happening at these meetings and why it was valid and worth me attending. And at those workshops, we actually develop test items. We're given a list of standards, we're given a list of items needed for each of those standards, and we actually write test items. And there's a whole set of requirements and PLs, and we decide if it's going to be a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and it's a whole process that I have to be honest. The first time I did it, my head spun for weeks after because as an educator, you're like, oh, that darn test, and it drives you nuts. But then when you go and you see the whole process behind it, you see how much time and effort, and actually the thought process behind it, which makes it a lot easier of a pill for me as a 5th grade teacher to swallow when I have to hand those tests out to my students, because I do know the steps that went into it. The next one happens usually in the summertime. so I do take time in the summer and go to these. I've been to 2, but this is the educator item review, and we actually do the editorial process based on the questions that were written by the teachers, any wording that looks funny, any bias, any math that doesn't look like it matches the standard or it matches the PLs. We're kind of like that second set of eyes. Range finding is when they decide which questions they want to include on the tests based on what standards they want on the test and how many, to make sure it's a variety of performance levels, so it's not all above level at 4s and it's also not below level at 1s. And I would love to be a part of that process, but I haven't had that opportunity yet. Forms construction is when they actually put the tests together and make it operational. They usually will put also the field testing questions on there as well. And then the finalize, I actually got to do for the first time this November, is a single day meeting in Albany where we actually take the test that is going to be given this coming school year. So I've actually taken the 5th grade math test this year. I did really well, but hopefully my kids will do well too. So it was an interesting process because it kind of puts yourself in their shoes and makes you think back to when, you know, it's been so long since I was in that seat, how that feels. So again, it's a 2-year process. The main points of why I love going to these, there's just a few of them to name that I don't want to take forever tonight. But one is understanding that process, understanding, yes, some questions are going to be heartbreakingly difficult, and not every student's going to get them, and probably maybe even only one in the class will get them, but that's okay. It's meant to see where you can reach, as opposed to the ones, you know, that we used to say, like, how in the world is our kid ever going to get that one? Well, there is going to be 1 or 2 that get that one, and it's okay that it's only those 1 or 2. So understanding that and being able to digest that makes it a lot easier for me to hand those tests out. The peer interaction, I work with educators from the entire state, New York City, Buffalo, Rochester, everywhere. The discussions we have as educators from other classrooms, I find to be extremely beneficial because I love my coworkers, but I speak to them every day, so that couple days a year where I get to interact with them and see how they teach things or how their students are learning is beyond measurable. Working with the State Department and Questar, again, that dynamic really puts things into perspective. I've found since I've done it, my instruction in math has improved. I have only done the math ones. I'm a little afraid to do any of the ELA ones, but I have noticed that the way I teach math, the way I introduce topics, and the broad, pretty much the big picture of the whole year has completely changed since I started going to these meetings. And also bringing back to the district, I'm not allowed to share the test items, so I couldn't come back with my little camera and tell them what was going to be on the test this year, but I could share the process. I could share the percentages of how many fraction questions or how many this questions, which, again, those pieces of information as an educator is hard to measure. So I've had the opportunity to do this a bunch of times, and I just want to say, if you see it come across your desk again, please say yes so I can go again, because I do enjoy them. And that's all. So, sorry I spoke like a mile a minute there, but if anybody has any questions, just let me know.
How long have they been doing it like this? Because it didn't used to be in this process, right?
They started including teachers, I want to say kind of like when the Common Core went through and they were getting a lot of pushback from it not being done by teachers. They've had this process together now for, I want to say, at least 10 years.
Oh.
So, and I know they've been doing it with the regents too now that they're switching to next generation standards. So, I enjoy it.
No, it's nice to know that you take the time to do this, so thank you.
Yes, and thank you for having me and taking up some of your time, especially on a budget evening, so.
So I just want to say too, you know, we haven't, this is a, you know, it's a challenge with the travel. It's, you know, it's a lot of time to do things. So to get a volunteer from, you know, Little West Canada to go out there with all the big schools and all those people is great to have representation there. It's a benefit to our teachers that are here along with Mrs. Allen, and so we're certainly, you know, appreciative of your time that you go out there and bring back as much info as you can really. But,
without being legally charged for it, yes, absolutely.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Allen.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda, but first we'll hear from our administration team. So we'll start with Mr. Ray.
So I don't really have a whole lot again this week, or compared to last month. We did receive our small bus the other day, Friday, so that's a good thing. We ordered some extra DEF fluid, that's what goes in the bus for diesel particulate filter. We ordered enough to get us through the end of this year, just because it was going up the following week, $1 a gallon, so we saved a little bit there. Not really sure where we're gonna be going as far as price on parts or anything in the near future. Everything seems to be going up. Speed reduction, I still have no update on that from last month. I talked to the guy last month, he didn't really seem like he was on top of it, maybe, I guess is the best way to put it. Some miscellaneous stuff too. We get quite a bit of questions from people asking why we have a snow day when it seems to be nice here, or the weather, maybe it's not as bad as they suspect. Just a few things so you guys know. Our district's 119 square miles, so it's a pretty large district. Elevation change, we have 459 feet of elevation at Castbridge, and at Dairy Hill we have 1,844. So we have almost a 1,400 foot in elevation change in our district, which is quite a lot that I think a lot of community members maybe don't know. So if people are asking you, that's some information you give to them. We also travel to 10 other sites besides just our district for out-of-district placements. Some are in Oneida County, some are down in the valley. So we have a lot of changes there too. Really all I got this month. If you guys got any questions? I did have, I wanted to tell you guys this too, I guess. We did have a staff member that applied for the driving position, or I shouldn't say a staff member, potential staff member that applied for the bus driving position. However, he found another job in another area and declined the position. Initially, we're going to present him tonight, so we haven't had any other applicants even for bus driving positions at this point. So, see what's going on. Any questions?
Good question.
Thanks, Mr. Ray.
Mr. Doherty.
Actually, I have quite a bit here. It's been a couple of months since I've seen you. That off, so it says there. Fall sports. We're committed again to 8-man football for the upcoming year. There's now 10 8-man football teams, which gives us enough to split up into 2 divisions. So we had an alignment meeting about that the other day. Our division for football will be Cooperstown, Sequoia, New York Mills, and Frankfort, which lucks out for us because we got a lot of home games there. We will still have to cross over to the other division. I don't know the schedule yet, so I don't know what they will be. But the other division will be Weedsport, Bishop Grimes, Morrisville, Eaton, Thousand Islands, and South Louis. There's no trip to Tupper Lake anymore. So, although they took care of us, they fed the boys after. They were very hospitable and nice, but that's a long ride. Like I said, we'll cross over with them. We also are looking to start up an 8-man modified football league this year, just because some of these schools were playing 11-man. We unfortunately haven't been able to field a team for the last 2 years. One, because COVID, we didn't have any modified. And then last year we didn't have enough numbers because our 7th graders stayed down and played Pop Warner. So moving down to 8-man, we have a much better chance of being able to field that. Plus, if we're going to play at the varsity level, we should probably be playing at the modified level. Interested teams in that right now are Weedsport, Bishop Grimes, Morrisville, Eaton, Sequoia, New York Mills, South Louis, and West Canada. But at the meeting we talked about it the other day, like we're not looking to travel out to Weedsport for a 4:30 modified football game. So we're looking to potentially play teams twice in the schedule. So we play Frankfort, and if it's a good matchup, we play them week 1, and then we play them again week 5. Should we play them week 1 and it's a blowout, we'll probably try to find somebody else for a second game like New York Mills, where it's a little bit more competitively balanced. We're still searching for a boys varsity soccer coach. We have it posted on OLAS. I have one applicant. I haven't bothered calling yet, but they live in Long Island, so I believe it's just a random generated application that went in for any soccer position posted in New York State. The one thing I will say, numbers are very concerning. Right now on paper, we have about 11 people that are eligible to play varsity soccer. Modified, we were right at that fringy number last year. A lot of times we were playing games with less than enough eligible players. And I believe on the ASO team last year, there were only 2, and I know this because one of them was my kid. I think, what were there, 2 6th grade boys on the ASO team this year? So it's not looking good the modified or the varsity level. So because of that, I still plan to have both of these teams, and we'll do everything we can to try to put them out there. But if for some reason we can't field these, would you want me to start calling around to other districts about possible combinations where it would at least give some of our athletes opportunities to play? Too early to think about that yet, or?
So I think as we get closer to that, I think it's a good starting point. Obviously, Mr. Doherty and I have had some discussion about this. We've kind of watched this come along here a little bit. We struggled a little bit last year. Maybe we'll be able to struggle through this year. I don't know, but I think as we look at that long term, and we've talked a lot about this. Those of you who've been here, we have two large teams playing in the same season. That's just it's becoming increasingly challenging to field football and soccer. It just really just by sheer math.
And we have cross country too.
And we have cross country too. Yeah. So, so these are just discussions that we're going to have. We'll keep you up to date on where the soccer is. This is, Mr. Doherty and I are at meetings regularly for the Center State Conference every month, and I'm not sure there is a month that goes by where we don't have 2 to 3 combinations that we have to approve at those meetings. So, it's just somewhere, we're going to be a part of in some ways. So.
The soccer numbers are struggling all over the Center State Conference. Like Little Falls and Dallasville are combined, and they barely were able to make it. In fact, they didn't even play the last game against us because they didn't have enough players between their 2 districts for one team. So soccer's in a bad place for boys at this time. So, like I said, I'm not looking. I don't want to do that, but it also takes a long time because it has to get approved here. It has to get approved at their district. It sounds good in theory when it's 10 months away, but then as you get closer to it, things change. So I just wanted to put that out there now, so that's potentially on the radar.
How does that work for practices?
So when you have combinations, basically it's on the parents to get their kids down there. So, yeah. So when we were talking about Dollarville potentially coming here for baseball, they would have had to get there. And that's the thing. So it always sounds good. You got 12 kids or 8 kids that want to do it, and then in the end you might end up with just 2 kids. That's what Little Falls and Dollarville found out with the whole thing. So.
When did the sign-ups go up for fall sports in the school year?
They'll go up pretty soon. I mean, today was the first day of spring, so we'll do that. I'll give that a couple of weeks till we get settled into our rosters, and then I'll put them up outside the door to my room. So the other hard part with the signups are, it's real easy to put your name on the list. It's another thing to show up 2 weeks before school starts for practices. So.
And then the 6th graders would, for modified, they be aware of it down there?
So I have Mr. Cool and Mr. Russo will go through and they'll explain all the sports that we have for modified kids, so they all get a chance to sign up at that day too, and then we have a pretty good idea. But I mean, for an 11-man sport, realistically, you wanna have around 14 or so to feel slightly comfortable, because all it takes is 1 injury and 2 kids eligibility-wise or something, and now you're out game. So it's not just about having that one number. You want a little bit of flexibility with it. But I'll keep you posted on that as we move along.
If you did do a combination, who would you reach out to?
So that was gonna be my next question, if you wanted to do that. So obviously not.
Are there any rules,
There's not. So like Little Falls and Dollarville, they already do it. So I probably wouldn't reach out to them, because for them to take another school on, you take a percentage of each of those. So that adds to your enrollment. So a lot of times, a Class D school, you add another school, now you're playing Class C when it comes to sectionals. So if you don't need the kids, you're not taking that on because you don't want to compete there. So Herkimer would be close to us, Frankfurt would be close to us. I know both of their programs, I won't say are struggling. Frankfurt's was struggling last year. They were really low on numbers as well. Herkimer was pretty low. There just aren't big teams of boys soccer anymore. It's just, I mean, the number of kids playing soccer now is down at boys from what I've seen all across the Center State.
So to answer that question, one, it's got to be with a school that is struggling with numbers as well. Maybe has enough to field a team, but could use more numbers. Because any school that has a full load is not going to take on another school. The other part is we've got to make it reasonable. So as Mr. Doherty said, it is on the parents. So if we are unable to do that, but we create a school that would be willing to take our kids and be the host school, they would play for that school, and it would be on the parents to transport to those practices.
Who decides who the host school is?
The host school would be the one.
Reaching out? Or
No, would be the one accepting the other school in. So, yeah. So like, for instance, like, I mean, when you're looking at schools, I just told you Frankfurt and Herkimer, I left Poland out because Poland, they have modified JV and varsity, so they're not going to, you know, I wouldn't expect them to want to take on another school when they're able to successfully field 3 teams already.
So the challenge is some of the Class D schools too, that don't have multiple fall sports like football, maybe don't have that number. It's the schools, it's actually like the Class C schools.
Yeah.
Or schools like us that are trying to do soccer and football together. That's the schools that are really open to that potential opportunity. So that's why you think Herkimer, well, they're quite a bit bigger,
Yeah.
but football and soccer together. But schools like Poland or Remsen or any of these other schools, they're only playing soccer, so that's the choice for the kids. So those are some of the dynamics and all of that.
So that's what I have for fall. Winter officially concluded this past weekend, sadly, but I will have to say, definitely since I've been doing this, and as long as I can remember, it was one of the most successful winters we've ever had at West Canada Valley. All in all, we won 7 league championships just alone in this winter season. We saw sectional championships, regional finalists. We had state finalists in indoor track and field and bowling as well. Our boys varsity basketball team were league champs, sectional champs, and regional finalists. Our girls varsity basketball team were league champions and sectional finalists. Our boys JV basketball team was league champions. Our girls JV basketball team was league champions. Boys indoor track was league champions. Girls indoor track was league champions. Girls bowling was league champions and sectional champions. Individually, we also had some other accolades. Will Smith scored 1,079 career points, was a big night for us. Braden Shepardson set a Section 3 record the other day for most threes in a season with 110, and an asterisk for 111. And Alyssa Youngs made it all the way down to Long Island for the state championships in the triple jump for indoor track. And Genevieve Lyon, for the first time in school history, made it all the way to the state bowling championship. So this bowling, when you get to that level, is just like the golf is. So in Section 3, they created an all-star team, what it's called. So the 6 best bowlers in Section 3 go and they compete at this as part of a team one. So there's a team event that goes along against each section, but then there's also an individual component that goes along. So Genevieve was a member of the Section 3 all-star team, and they actually finished first in the state out of all the sections that were there competing. And she rolled the 27th highest game at the tournament, and she finished 34th out of all female bowlers in New York State. And like I said, she's the first one to ever do that. So it was really a truly amazing winter for our student athletes. They did great and everything. And even the boys team that didn't win had one of their better years in bowling that we've had in a long, long time. So I just want to say thanks to all the student athletes and the coaches and the parents and the community and everybody that supported everybody for everything. It was a special winter for me and for everybody else. On top of that, streaming basketball games this year that seemed to be very well received. I had countless people from other schools come in and tell us how much better our thing was, which was nice because I had to hear how much worse ours was last year. So that was really, really good. A lot of schools have reached out to me about what we do, and so I've given them the information on that. So thank you very much for allowing us to do that. In fact, the last sectional game that we hosted here with the girls and the boys back to back, we had 750 views that night. And we close our games off once the game's over, because we don't want our scouting tape out there. So that was 750 live views. That wasn't how many people that went back. So at some point that night during those games, that's how many people were watching, which was, and for those of you who were there, we had another 500 inside the gym, so it was a pretty big deal. I want to thank the boosters for all their help with that. They were at every single game. I want to thank the chaperones, bookkeepers, scoreboard operators, Tina Sternberg for being there to help all those games go off, and thanks to Mr. Conover for providing his DJ services all winter. Spring sports started today. Numbers look pretty solid for the first day. That can always change to the first couple, but that started. Modified sports will go off on April 4th. All spring schedules are done. They're released on Schedule Galaxy, so you can go look at them all there. And the only other thing I have for spring sports at this point is that we will host the league meet for track and field and sectionals for track and field this year. I got a couple of miscellaneous items here. We had some donations come in. When it rains, it pours. The first one we had a while back was it was an anonymous donation for $1,500 that was earmarked for cross country. This was somebody that wanted the kids to be able to get some warm-up gear that they could get their names on and then be able to keep at the end of the season. So that was a very nice donation that we took in for that. We have another donation that's going to be coming in, it's in the process. Former West Canada athlete, Randy Wood, he was a member of the state championship football team, reached out to me after we won the sectional championship and wanted to know if he could buy some jackets for the kids or something. So I explained to him that the Boosters does that. I didn't want to, rain on their parade with the whole thing. So he said, do you have any other ideas, something we can do for the team? So I talked to Coach Hoban, and he said what would be nice is we don't have any signage out by the football field to remember the state championship team in '98, or obviously for the sectional thing. So I went back to Radney, I said, what do you think about getting some stuff out there? He thought it was a great idea. So we found a company over in Sequoia Valley Signs, and they're working up some proofs for us. And the things we came up with were 2 flags that we can run up the flagpole underneath the American flag on game days. One to remember the state championship team in '97, and then this year's sectional team, because those are our only 2 sectional titles. So that would be nice on game day, but then we were thinking for the rest of the year of having 2 metal signs hung up that we could mount right to the scoreboard, one for the state championship team and then one for this year's sectional team. So Randy seemed like he thought that was a great idea, so I have them working on the proofs. As soon as that's all done, I'll let him know. He can donate the money to us, and then we can get those signs made up, and we can have them out there for next fall. I want to say thanks to Patty Jean's Restaurant. They put together a breakfast order for our boys the other day. When they got on the bus, they headed out there and they stopped at Patty Jean's. They reached out to me and said, do you think they'd want breakfast? I said, have you ever met 15 teenage boys that don't want breakfast? So that was really nice, and they went smoothly on their trip on the way out. And then we also had another donation, not football this time, but basketball. 3 members of the '95-'96 team that went to Glens Falls. Dustin Cook, Jonah Margulis, and Danny Kozik. Danny reached out to me and wanted to honor the boys for their sectional championship as they made their run towards Glen Falls. So they didn't donate any money, but what they did was they purchased team backpacks for the guys. They got them purple Adidas backpacks, so they'd all have matching backpacks for winning sectionals and moving on. So those actually arrived and we handed them out to the kids, and the kids seemed super appreciative of that too. So I want to thank all those people for their donations to our programs and thinking of us years later and coming back. 2 more things for you. I've had multiple people reach out to me because Will this year, I guess, put more into there with 1,000 points. They want to donate money so we can purchase banners for the gym for 1,000-point scorers. I don't know if that's something we want to go ahead and do to match up with all the other ones here. So basically the idea would be you'd have a banner hanging on the boys' side, a banner hanging on the girls' side with all the people that achieved 1,000 points throughout the history. Is that something you guys, yeah? Go ahead. Okay. And then the other thing is I've had numerous people call up to the school and ask about if we're going to be opening up the fitness center again. That's kind of up to you guys too. So are we okay with people coming in at night and using the fitness center? Or
Who would operate in there?
that's the problem. So in years past, we had a couple of volunteer guys that would do it, but there were numerous nights that, and they just couldn't show up. But I mean, I can't call Rick McCarroll and be like, why didn't you show up? You were supposed to, you know what I mean? Like he had things going on. So are we okay with people being in there unsupervised? If so, I can.
Not unsupervised, I don't think.
They'd have somebody
I
there.
would move.
Right, liability.
So, yeah, I understand where you're going with that. Some have buildings open and, they just sign waivers and you're in there and it's open. So they'll come in and sign in. Same thing as if somebody wanted to, we've had people that walk the building in the winter, not necessarily fitness center, but they're building walkers. This is pre-COVID, obviously. So we had them sign in as well in the fitness center. And so that you knew who everybody was in there, and then they would sign out once they left. You'd set hours for the fitness center and school walking. And then, it's just one of those things where it closes at this time, we clean it and we lock it up and it's done. So if it's open from 6 to 8, 5 to 8, 6 to 9, whatever hours you want to, everybody must sign off initially on the waiver if they're gonna use it. And then it's there because a lot of schools don't have people like you're talking about there. So some schools don't want to do that. Some schools have chosen to pay people. We've had this discussion a million times to see if you want to post a job, to see if anybody wants to run the fitness center and pay them. But other schools don't. They open it up and it's open for hours and it's in and out, and sort of like you sign the waiver and you're a community member and you can use it. And close it down and clean it. So those are, you know, I've had discussions in the past, you know, if we decided to do that, I would make a couple more calls just to make sure of those through, you know, with Utica National and our insurance and our, you know, our legals on that. But I've done a lot of discussion with this among schools, and in the past, this question's come up with this and community members that want to use it. So it's kind of up to us what we want to do with the whole thing if we do open it up. As Mr. Doherty mentioned, not sure who you're going to get, and if you do get somebody, it might not be consistent. So, you know, if you want it to be consistently open.
Morning and evening? or-
No, we were talking, Mr. Doherty and I were talking more evenings, just having it open in evenings, nothing early.
Who does the sanitation of the equipment
So,
at night?
aside for the wipe downs of the regular, would be our cleaning crew at night to clean the fitness center. They
They
clean it
don't have
anyway,
enough
correct?
to do?
They cleaned it anyway.
Yeah, we clean it anyway, because during the day we use it with gym classes and things, so. So it's part of our regular.
It would just be shifted to the end of the.
And then in the night,
Yeah,
what time's your last custodian? Time out?
11:30.
Huh?
11:30.
Oh, so.
So it would be open till the last custodian? maybe?
No,
No,
we would
no,
say-
no, would it be time if they
Yeah.
closed at 9 or if the
I
last
was
man
gonna
out
say,
was
is
9
it
o'clock?
just free for all?
no, we would probably look for enough clearance time for our athletic teams that are using it, and then set a time, whether it's 6 to 9 or 5 to 8 or something like that, like a 3-hour.
I think it used to be 5 to 8 when, back when it was still running. But like I said, it was real inconsistent, and there were days there were people there and days there weren't. So I'm not for or against, I just kind of looking for. a
So
direction.
these calls started rolling in right away as soon as everything
Yeah.
I'll talk about
I
tonight
think
got
people-
lifted, so the
it's
weather,
already
we're gonna open
good.
back up again.
I'm fine if you do a waiver, but just double check with our insurance company and let us know, just to verify. Anybody else?
You can check into it and let us know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll check on that, and
Yep.
then, so nothing for right now then?
Yep, I'll keep
Okay.
them updated on where we go from there.
He's
No,
gonna
he's
check on
gonna
it
check
and
on
let
the
us
insurance
know.
and stuff.
So I'll just kind of stand still until I
Yeah.
hear more.
Yep, my intention is, we've got like 3 or 4 weeks to April break, I'm not thinking this is a 911 right away, so, you know what I mean, so maybe, you know, give me some time to get through it, and I can bring it even back at April 4th, we have a meeting April 4th now, so I can bring it back with some info.
Did you
Does
put
anybody
feelers
mention
out?
swim?
Sorry.
Nobody has.
No.
Nobody has called about the hallway walking either. The only thing I've gotten is, I've had 3 phone calls about, 1 email, 2 phone calls about if the fitness center would be back open again.
Any other questions?
I just would like to make a suggestion for the ones that won stuff, Genevieve, Brandon, Will, I think the Young's girl, I forgot her first name. If those could be put on the thing outside.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have them out there, and I'm actually, basically everything I read to you tonight, I'm gonna have put out on Facebook and put on the webpage too. I just wanted to go over it here before
Okay,
I
yeah,
put it
put
out
it
to
in the
that, so.
newsletter.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for all those updates and congratulations to all our kids and coaches.
Just go to the buses, they did all the work, so. Good?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mrs. Collins?
So I thought as we were entering the spring months here, I'd ask the teachers if they can start sharing a little bit with you. They do a lot of great things in the spring. I'd like to say thank you to Mrs. Allen. The job that she's doing is a very difficult job with the state. They originally put this committee together because of numerous teachers across the state that were complaining that the test was not developmentally appropriate and they didn't feel like it was a fair test. And so this committee that they have now, that's their job. They go through, they make sure that all the test items are fair, and she works very hard on that, and she brings some great knowledge back to our teachers here. So I do appreciate that. In addition to that, there were numerous teachers that asked me if I could read something to you that they sent in because they couldn't be here tonight. I picked 3 for now, and then I'll share some more the next time around. So for Mrs. Schreppel in grade 4, she said, students in my Tier 1 and Tier 2 RTI groups entered a poetry contest at the Old Forge Library this winter. Kids from Herkimer, Oneida, and Madison counties were invited to participate. Sophia Lopez in my class won first place in the grade K through 4 category for her poem, Happiness is With Us. And we did post that on Facebook, and we're going to add it to our newsletter. So congratulations to Sophia. From Mrs. Lawton, Miss Bray, and Mrs. Basil, March Madness is here, while college basketball teams battle it out for the championship. Lisa Lawton, Julie Basil, and Jackie Bray are using March Madness excitement to inspire the K-2 classrooms to read. This competition encourages students to keep expanding their skills and their love of reading. March Madness is a themed reading tournament of books. Since this college level basketball tournament is going on, they are piggybacking off from that and encouraging students to read and vote for their favorite book to win the tournament of books. They choose the Sweet 16 books to begin, and each day students read the 2 books in their classroom and vote on their favorite books in the brackets, set up in the same tournament style format in which basketball teams compete. The bracket is set up in the main hallway for all to see, and the daily results are read each morning on the announcements. At the completion of the tournament, we have a winning book title, and the students are highly interested in the competition and are eagerly reading and listening to the books in the tournament. Lisa Lawton, K-2 special education teacher and president of Amazing Gracie's Gift, was nominated and is a top 3 finalist in the Remarkable Women Contest sponsored by WUTR. The contest recognizes the great contributions women have made to our nation and local communities. Laura Brill from WUTR interviewed Lisa at school to talk about her nomination and how she balances her career in teaching and running a not-for-profit foundation, and the interview will air later this month, so congratulations to Mrs. Lawton. And from Mrs. Main, Mrs. Purinton, Mrs. McAvoy, and Mrs. Parent, Reading Safari is back. This year the program will run February 28th through April 8th. All students will be encouraged to keep a log of the hours they read at home. Once at least 6 hours are turned in, students will receive a free pass to the water safari. Once again, every family will receive a copy of an Adirondack Kids book, and the authors, the Van Ripers, will be visiting us on Tuesday, May 24th. We're planning a book share on April 1st. Students in K through 6 are donating books that they'd like to trade for another book, and all classes will be given a time to choose a book from our book swap table. And I just want to say that all of these teachers work together in these committees with me to put this stuff together, and I really do appreciate the hard work that they put into all of this for our students, because I certainly couldn't coordinate all of this alone. In addition to that, our 4th grade team did come to me recently, and they asked me if I could provide some training for them on how to adapt some of that Orton Gillingham that we've been talking about to the intermediate grades, and we're starting with them. And their first training was this week, and they did a great job with that. And just so that you know, information for kindergarten registration was sent home to all families. We're also posting it to Facebook and Parent Square on March 17th. That's the first day of our parent-teacher conferences. We're going to have a table set up, and I believe that Daphne's coming over, and she's going to help anybody that needs help with that, or they can pick up a packet to bring home for kindergarten registration, and they can do that even if they want to call the office. We'll send them out, so all that information is going out as well. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not a long meeting already.
I thought you were just gonna be a long
Don't worry about it,
night.
I'll be short for you. So, actually, I just got back from a 2-day conference. I was, yesterday and today on Restorative Justice for about 6 to 8 hours yesterday, and grading policies today. I thought the grading policy presenter was very good, so I asked him if he'd come in September to one of our superintendent days to meet with our teachers. He talked about looking at grading and some of the things we may be doing that is not beneficial to our students, putting a lot of weight on homework instead of what they know, more of what they're doing. So that's something I think would be good to have a presentation for our staff. The Restorative Justice, that's a way of looking at discipline in the school in a way other than just punitive. Let's see how we can help our students grow, learn from their mistakes. It's something we try to do anyways, but it was just a little bit more of that. Generally what we do as parents, it's not all discipline, it's sitting down with them, let them know how to make better decisions. So both days, excellent. I want to thank you and Mr. Shepson for sending me to that. I learned a lot. Wednesday, we're having a blue and yellow day, elementary and high school. I don't know if you saw that, to raise some money for Ukraine and to support them. Thursday, we have a internet safety presentation for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders about how to appropriately interact on the internet. It's something we find is often a problem in our school. causes a lot of drama and just safety concerns for our kids. Last week we had our band concert, full packed house, it was excellent, anybody who was there, I thought they did a great job. And we have our chorus concert tomorrow night, if you'd like to come, that's at 7 o'clock, it starts. And then this week we have a half day, we're gonna be looking at my staff on our side, gonna be looking at state test, training, because they're coming up, the end of the month and months to come, as well as having a faculty meeting just to talk about issues that are going on, or concerns, or thoughts for the rest of the school year. And that's about it. I don't know if anybody has any questions about the conference or anything else.
No
Alright.
questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Sorry about
Robert.
that. All right, for the consent agenda, any questions on anything before we take a motion? No? Okay, a motion to approve the consent agenda as proposed. Jessica first. Sarah second, all in favor? Motion to go into executive session for appointment personnel matters, including review and appointment of employees and contract negotiations. Janine first, Jessica second, all in favor?
parental child care leave for Kylie Tree, agriculture technology teacher parent-child leave on or about April 1st, 2022, with tentative return date on or about July 1st, 2022. Janine first, Sarah second, all in favor? Need a motion to approve the appointment of Amanda Houghton, non-certified substitute teacher, teacher assistant, monitor aide K through 12 for the district approved rate sheet effective March 15th, 2022. Sarah first, Jessica second, all in favor? Motion to approve the appointment of Patricia Lang, substitute teacher per the district approved rate sheet effective September 1st, 2022. Shauna first, Jessica second, all in favor? Motion to approve the appointment of Stephanie Finn, substitute teacher, TA, monitor aide, K through 12 per the district approved rate sheet effective March 15th, 2022. Janine first, Sarah second, all in favor? Thank you. Motion to approve the 2 district emergency days on April 8th and May 27, 2022. Sarah first, Jessica second, all in favor? Motion to approve the bus proposition resolution. Shall the Board of Education of the West Canada Valley Central School District be authorized to, 1, purchase 4 school buses at a maximum aggregate cost of approximately $438,492. Second, expend such sum for such purpose. 3, levy the necessary tax therefore to be levied and collected in an annual installment in such years and in such amounts as may be determined by the Board of Education in accordance with section 416 of the Ed Law, taking into account state aid and trade-in values. And 4, in anticipation of the collection of such tax, issue bonds, notes, and or installment purchase contracts of the district at one time or from time to time in the principal amount not to exceed $315,992 and levy a tax to pay the interest on said obligation. Be it further resolved that the district clerk is hereby directed to include notice of such proposition in the notice of the annual meeting, but further resolved that this resolution take effect immediately upon its adoption. Jessica first, Sarah second, all in favor? Motion to approve the land bid. I'd say who goes to?
Yep.
To Richard Berlinski for $80 per acre for a total amount, annual rent of $1,848. Janine first, Peter second, all in favor? Motion to approve the building mechanic resolution. West Canada Board of Ed authorizes the creation of the competitive civil service title building mechanic for the school district. This approval will be submitted to Herkimer County Civil Service for review and final approval. Once approved, district will be permitted to post the position.
The official title is building maintenance mechanic.
Sorry, building maintenance mechanic is the official title. Motion to approve. Sarah first, Jessica second, all in favor?
How long does that take for them to get back to you?
Should be pretty quick, right?
Yeah, he'll tell us what the title, what the duties are qualified as that
Oh.
title, and then we can move forward.
Motion to approve the resolution for custodian. The West Canada Valley Board of Ed authorizes the creation of 3 competitive civil service titles custodian for the school district. This approval will be submitted to the Herkimer County Civil Service for review and final approval. Once approved, the district will be permitted to post the position. Janine first, Sarah second, all in favor? Now we need a motion to approve, the Middleville Free Library and the Newport Free Library to post, I'm looking for my cheat sheet here. Gotta make sure I say it right. Okay. We received a letter from from the trustees of the Middleville Free Library and the Newport Free Library to request the school board present to the public the following resolution for additional appropriations on our May 2022 ballot. The last increased appropriation was in 2011. We want to make it marked for those that this has nothing to do with the school district. However, we do have to do a motion to allow this to be on our vote in May. So I need a motion to approve that this would be on the ballot. Janine first, Jessica second, all in favor? All right, discussion items, budget workshop.
Okay, so, in front of you, I kinda wanna start, if it's okay with everybody, with our revenue update. So you have a sheet in front of you that has, the revenue status report, it's updated from last month, it looks like this, single sheet front and back for you, on there. The other document you have is the appropriations. I wanna start, if we can, with the revenues. I've given you a whole bunch of information, again, in your workshop packet, much of which we've gone over several times over the last few months. Nothing has really changed in terms of the different departments and where we are going with that. So our real focus as we get to March is on the numbers and where we are with all this. One of the things we did between last month and this month in both the revenues and the appropriations is, one, we received more information so that we can plug in more accurate numbers that reflect the budget, as opposed to you know, the educated guesses or educated estimates that we were putting in leading up to this. And secondly, we took a look at some of the, and I talked about this last month, some of the appropriations, and trying to reduce those line items to make a little easier read, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the appropriation sheet, where we've consolidated some of those codes down for us. And we'll continue to look at this as we move forward. But with that all being said, I want to look and take us through, or have Ms. Crossett sort of take us through the revenues and where we've gotten the information she's gotten in terms of that. What I want to make note of that we'll also discuss tonight is since the beginning here, we've started with in terms of our revenue page with a 0% tax levy increase. What we've included on this revenue page for you are the increases that would be allowed under the cap, and obviously anywhere in between any of this, in terms of revenue increases. So you'll see at the top, you have a 0%, you have a 1% number, a 1.5%, a 2%, and our cap, as I've mentioned to you, actually is 2.8. So as long as you stay under 2.8, you've stayed under the state tax cap, which doesn't require us to have a 60% vote. In this district, you know, there hasn't been any recommendation to do that, nor will there be tonight. So there's no reason to even have that sort of discussion. But I did want you to see the numbers and revenue in terms of those tax levies, because we do need to make sure that we're taking a close look at that. So with that being said, Ms. Crossett, can you take us through the update on the revenues?
Actually, nothing has changed on the revenues, because we're still waiting for the executive budget. We have the governor's proposal, but we do not have the final yet, obviously. So as far as the revenues themselves go, there's no change in any of those columns. The only thing that we did put on here, like Mr. Shepherdson said, was the tax levy, the real property tax cap, or levy amount. And the numbers across the top are what the levy would increase at the 1%, 1.5%, 2%, and 2.8%. That's a direct effect on the appropriation of fund balance. On the last page, the fund balance appropriation this current year is 1.2. With the 0% tax levy increase, it would be 1.9. And then it goes down to 1.7 if we go to the maximum allowable under our cap. As far as using.
On the back of this.
On the back page. The bottom number is the fund balance that would be appropriated to offset the revenues that we anticipate as of right now.
So, Ms. Crossett and I have a lot of discussion about this, and those of you that have been on the board with me, I always like to have this discussion at this point in time. So the question always comes up, because we look at budgets on an annual basis, in terms of, what are we doing with taxes, what's our cap, what do we want to do in terms of revenue, okay? So the only, when it comes to revenue for the district, one of the lone ways you have control over as a board is the tax levy piece. The rest of it, we're kind of at the mercy of the state of New York and the aid packages that we get and so forth with that. So as we look at the increases, you see numbers at the top that are 1 year or for this particular budget year increases. So when you look at these kinds of things, I always, and as you have a discussion about what you want to do or where you're at this point in time, you always want to take a look at long-term in terms of tax increases, because that's really what this means to our district, revenue over time. Because if you look at a 1% increase of $51,394, that's not a significant number in the overall budget. But over a 5-year period, that's $250,000. So those kinds of discussions you have in terms of maintaining your revenue streams to make sure that you are funding any sort of increases or inflation, at this point in time, the rapid inflation that's going on in terms of our society and so forth. So I always want to caution boards to think about it in terms of long-term, and if in that situation as a group, we still feel like we're in a good situation here budgetarily, where we can remain at 0%. Then that's okay. We continue to review every year and say, okay, where are we at this year and where can we go from there? I'd like you just for a second to flip into the budget workshop packet I gave you, which get into, which would be like page 3 of this packet that has a chart on it. So each year, as you know, those of you that have been here, I sort of give you an idea of where we are on the tax levy and what we've done over this. So the chart on this page takes you back to 1819, where the tax on true was $17.16, and the percent of the increases over the prior year in terms of what we took in taxes, or where it changed from that year on tax on true. So as you look at this, over the last few years, and Ms. Crossett, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we've essentially remained between 0 and 1% in our increases as a board, correct? Okay, so we have not gone above 1% during this time frame. Now, when you, and I'm not going to claim to be a tax expert or anything, and Ms. Crossett can jump in here, but understand that, that when you have that increase, that's the number that we put out as a levy. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to be a 1% increase. That means some people might be higher, some people may see a decrease in that, and then we look at what the overall intake of that. So when we look at this over a period of time, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, the tax increase has been fairly flat to negative in terms of where we've done in revenue on that. But on the same token, we've been able to leverage some other funding and different things and put ourselves in position to be able to do that. And I'm not going to sit here again tonight and tell you that we aren't in a position to continue on that path. But I do want to caution, as you look forward and look at the long term, where's your revenue stream? Where are the costs of things going as a school district? Where do you, when do you want to start to increase that at all? Do you think it's time to do that? Are you concerned about down the road? So we've talked, and I'm not a 911 about this, but we talk about the wind pilot, and that question's been asked in here. So we're looking at another, quick guess, 8 years of that, okay? And that increases every year, so that revenue stream increases every single year for our district here. But in 8 years, what happens? It's gone. So you're losing, over time, I'm not saying 8 years from now, I'm not saying you have to prepare for that now, but those will be things that we will be discussing over the next few years. How do we prepare for that transition? So again, I think in terms of this aspect of the budget, I think it's important that I talk about that I let you think about that revenue piece, to think about the long-term pieces of it, not think about it just necessarily, do we need it next year? No, probably don't. Do you need it over a 5-year period? Those kind of things. Right now, between federal money and other money that we're able to leverage, and the preparation we've gotten to this point, yeah, I think the district is in good shape financially. So, with that being said, this is pretty close to what the revenues will be for this year, correct? With the exception of, we always hope that once this is officially passed in Albany, that aid will go up. This is kind of the lowest case scenario and that we'll see a little bit more. I'm not as optimistic that we'll see the increase that we normally, usually when we do this, I'll be like, we're gonna see probably a decent increase on this. We have a different governor now, different proposal. There was a lot of money allocated to districts who they deemed as underfunded, so we were not one of them, so we got the minimum of 3.9, I believe, increase, which was the minimum that any school would get. So I don't anticipate that changing much, maybe a little, but I don't see it changing much, if at all. So this is pretty close to what you're looking at in terms of revenues. Questions on the revenue side of this before we switch over to the appropriation side of it?
With the fund balance allocation, what's the remaining fund balance if we use that 1,920,000?
About 2 million,
About what?
2 million.
Thank you.
And we'd still be above that 4%, 2 million.
It would be close because some of that is allocated to the reserves.
Okay.
How many teachers do we have altogether?
71 in the union, but they're not all teachers.
Yeah. So there's 71 in the teachers union, she said, which there's a few therapists and things like that. So I would say in the 60s, Mr. Murdo.
We've been pretty steady. We were talking, the last 5 years, we were talking to taxes. What have we done in the last 5 years? We added?
Added a couple teachers, yeah. This year, not, but the last couple we had a special ed.
Before
Yeah,
that,
we've added a couple
I'm just
teachers.
putting the 5-year thing together in my mind, that's all.
Yep, a few we've added over the last couple of years.
And our enrollment over the last 5 years is what? Down?
A little bit, yep. Our areas that we've added, Mr. Marco, haven't been in the regular general ed grade areas, they've been in the high need areas. We haven't added to sections and things like that, or expanded like subject areas or any of that.
I'm just putting the whole picture together, that's all. Our enrollment's going down.
Yep.
Our teachers, we've added a few, and now I'm just looking at the 0 or whatever.
Yep.
So over the next few years, I know you don't have that crystal ball in front of you, but what do you think? We're gonna add teachers?
So I don't see us adding any teachers. I wouldn't envision that. At this point in time, I think we've, in this, as a year-to-year discussion, but I would say at this stage, in our discussions we had this year with our principals, we're in a pretty good situation right now in terms of how we're handling our student needs here in the district. So I don't anticipate increases anywhere, no.
Okay.
My next question goes back to the gifts and donations. What did the music department purchase with that $2,000 they got from the family?
I would have to check. I don't know off the top of my head.
I would like to know. And what was the last one went to, is that
Cross
Cross-country.
country.
cross country?
You already said they bought shirts or coats with their names.
Warm-ups.
What they had?
Warm-ups with their names.
So they haven't bought anything yet with them, but that was what the anonymous donor intended for them to do, was so that kids could purchase some warm-up gear, like jackets, that they could have their names on and then they could keep at the end of the year, so.
Thank you. I mean, it's just nice to know that, we get these donations. It's nice to know what the department, if they give it to the department, what they get.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we bought some instruments. There was an instrument we bought with that. Yeah, I can get an update for you on that.
Well, we did say at the last meeting, we wanted to know, right, what's
Yep.
going on with this
Yep.
and that.
I'll get you the music.
And going back to Mr. Markle's question, we have 3 sections of everything in 7 through 12?
We have 4 sections. We have 4 English teachers, 4 math teachers.
How many?
4 math, 4 English, 4 science, 4 social studies.
Oh, so it changes. 4 sections?
Oh, sections, I'm sorry, each,
Yeah.
so we have 3, it depends on the year. Right now, we have 3 sections of English, you mean teachers or sections of?
Teachers, how many
Oh, yeah, we
sections
have
do
4
we have
science
with-
teachers.
Like, how many sections do we have for grade 7?
Grade 7, we just have 1 English teacher, 1 social studies teacher.
Yeah, but how many sections, how many classes do they teach? How many English 7 classes do we have, 3 or 4?
It's usually about 3, sometimes we may go over to 4.
3.
our English 9 is 3 sections, English 10 is 3 sections, Mr. Ernest teaches 3 sections of Global 9, 3 sections of Global 10. As we get up into the high school, that changes economics and government. The sections reduce because they're half-year courses.
We have 3 sections of everything in elementary.
Yep,
Thank you.
We do? 3.
right.
We still have a 10-period day?
Yes, 10 equal 38-minute periods.
Your answer of yes was enough for me. Thank you. Shit. Okay. Do you know how much we spend on each student?
Cost per pupil, do you know that number?
Not off the top of my head.
Yep, we can get that, I don't know.
Okay, I just
Cost per pupil
wondered
is for us right now.
if our ratio has gone up any, you know, that we get more money or whatever.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Per student.
Other questions on the revenue? Okay, so we'll go back to that. I want to go through appropriations if we can a little bit here. And I'll let Ms. Crossett take us through a little bit of this, a little bit of the work she's done since last month on this, and where we, you know, have had some changes in appropriations, things like that.
I've labeled all of the columns on the far right of what the change consisted of, what created the change. The first page is, there's 4 salary items on there that increased those numbers. Go to page 2, there's the Boces at the top, and then salaries. And then on the tax collection, we talked about that last month. That increased because of the payments that we're processing in-house that are coming out of off the bank number. The middle down, the middle where the Boces dropped down by 3,900. Boces is no longer running the cooperative purchasing through Herkimer Boces, so that decreased by $3,900. So no longer providing that service. And on the bottom is salary increase. And that is taking into account the cleaners changing to custodians. That dollar amount. Page 3, the water testing, that went up because we have to take it to a different facility, and they're charging more on those. The district insurance is our liability, student accident, all of that insurance. That's gone up. Next one is a decrease of 18,000, and that was when we purchased the storage containers this year. I took those out of the budget for next year. Materials and supplies increase of 6,000. That's the extra mops and rags and cleaning for the COVID. Those costs are also increasing. Number 2, fuel heating oil, that is a discussion item. I have it in there for an increase because of what fuel is doing right now. That is going to be up to you guys if you want that to go that high for a budget item, or if we want to knock that down a little bit. I will tell you that our last 2 fuel deliveries, we had one 2 weeks ago. That was $22,000, and the same amount last week, 3 weeks ago and last week, 22,000 first one and 29,000 for the same number of gallons.
Are we gonna go
2
over budget
weeks?
on that?
No, we've always,
No,
so,
there's always a little bit.
yeah,
of
so we allocate, because that's a really uneasy number always, so fluctuation, but it's never usually like it is now. So typically we're there, which allows for fluctuations of normal fluctuations, but right now, so we had this discussion, Ms. Crossett and I, about, you know, where do we put that number in here, because it's a significant number, the fuel cost for our district. You know, where do we want to, and we kind of middled it almost, where we, you know, obviously we don't pay the fuel cost, the exact fuel cost that the consumer would pay, and, you know, that kind of thing. But we still have to allocate for that increase. You know, so I believe this is looking at somewhere around 3, is that what it is, a little above 3?
350, I think.
350, here for us.
Per gallon.
So we started out with 4, that looked real ugly. So I, but I do think we have some leeway where we normally budget on that. I don't know where it's gonna go. I hope it's gonna go the other way by next year, but I don't know the answer to that. So I do think we need to allocate for it, and hopefully we don't need it, but I think it needs to be there.
We can pay any of the taxes and stuff, right?
No.
So that's 350 without all the taxes?
Yeah,
That's the number that's in here.
that's the number that's on that number you're looking at.
And this is a state bid? Is this fuel on state bid?
State contract, yes.
State contract, so it's rack plus so much? You probably don't.
Last one, I believe last week's was $2.85 a gallon, up from $2.29.
So they're
Two weeks
budgeting
prior.
$350.
Yeah,
for
this
next
number has
year.
350 in it.
Anticipating increases.
So that's something to look at for the next, before we do the final budget. Under maintenance, the 69,000, that is salary increases plus the additional building mechanic. The line below that is a reduction by 29,000 for the purchase of the truck that happened this year. I did put the zero turn in, and that was 10,000, I believe, 10,900. Maintenance and professional technical, that's just cost increases for everything. Next page is Boces. The compressed gas, cost increases, Boces, salaries. Next page is where we started consolidating the codes. Basically, I took everything that was labeled professional and technical, and I still have to split it between buildings for our state reporting. So I did 7 through 12 and K through 6. And that's how I took out all of the individual departments and just put them all under 7 through 12. K6 doesn't have any P&T in their side. Next group there that's not shaded is the district insurance and postage. The next one down is the travel codes, same thing, I put them in 7 through 12 and K through 6. I didn't change the numbers from last month in those, I just consolidated them down. And that whole next page is the same thing, the shaded areas are consolidated by area.
So we talked about this a little bit in the past, I think. I just want to reiterate. They changed the way that we report stuff in our budgets too, to that, and that's what Ms. Cross is referring to. We had to, Ms. Cross had to spend a lot of time allocating what building is what, break down the specific expenses and so forth. And that's the way it's reported. Once it gets situated, and that's part of what we're doing here as well, then I think, we'll be able to do it much easier. But the first transition was not good, really, to try to do it. So, and for a big school, it must have been crazy. But for us, we're able to get down. But we do have to report by building, and we have 2 buildings here, considered 2 buildings.
2 beds codes. So these are basically all just split now between K6, 7, 12, because that's how I had to report it.
What's the $35,000 one that's 3/4, almost to the bottom? 7 through 12, 35, like roughly.
Okay.
The shaded, full shaded area one. I don't see a page number.
On the bottom of the table.
6.
You're talking about the $40,799
Yeah,
from last year was at 5,400.
yes.
No, that's the consolidation of all those
That's
numbers
all
together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the bottom number is the consolidation of all those individual
Okay.
numbers.
Yeah.
I
all
look
the
fast and
shaded
saw
area.
that.
Once we get to next year, this is gonna look really good for you, because it's just gonna go side to side for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're just showing you where you're consolidating.
The next page is basically salaries, Boces. On the bottom, we had a retirement that wasn't replaced in the library teaching assistant.
So as you look through this and you get into the page 11, which gets us into the ERS numbers, Social Security, can you talk a little bit about that, Carol?
The ERS, the rates dropped quite a bit. So we had a decrease on those of almost 80,000. Conversely, the TRS rates went up. So we had an increase of 60,000 on that code. Social Security is Social Security. Workers' comp is based on salary, so that went up a little bit because of the salary increases. Unemployment, I took 10,000 out of there because the unemployment that we've been experiencing, the federal government has reimbursed us for. And we don't anticipate any layoffs for the next year or so, and that's where the unemployment will come from. Health insurance is an anticipated 6% increase. The top of the last page, the flex benefits, those are anticipated retirements and unused sick day pay. I don't anticipate any teachers reaching the first year of eligibility next year. The rest of it is contractual construction bonds, bus bonds.
So just to summarize, and again, I say this, many of you have been on this board for a long time now, you know, the uncontrollable costs drive this budget. In the end, we just get the numbers, we look at them, where are they next year, we give our estimates, this is where the increases really are, you know, in this budget again. So how those numbers come in, one of the things that I wanna, is when we budget, we're budgeting as if there aren't necessarily other ways to fund things. So right now, as I mentioned before, we do have some funding available in certain areas, and what we've been able to do over the last few years, and we'll be able to continue to do in the next year, is maximize the funding that we're receiving in terms of federal funding, whether it be for target district funds, or whether it be for you know, the COVID relief funds and so forth, to try to limit the amount of you know, general fund use that we need to do to meet these budget areas. So that's why I look at the budget. You know, this budget's probably going to end up in the 3s in terms of the increase in overall budget, in 3% plus range, and you know, we're going to try to maximize you know, as much of the revenue streams that we have to keep this where we're at, so that when we come back and sit here next year, you know, we're still having positive discussions about where we're at and what we want to do, and you know, again, discussions about where you want to go long term. So, you know,
We have leveraged the federal money a lot for technology.
yeah.
Purchases.
So, you know, you've got a few different things. Now, you've got the Boces project, you've got our project, you got, you know, some long-term look. Federal money won't be there for forever. Look at it from a 1 year, we're in a really good position. Want to keep ourselves there long-term. You know, I certainly want you to be able to take this, and that's why you get it, so you have every piece of information that I have as of today in terms of this to kind of look at. Typically, you know, we're going to be back a little bit quicker because of our meetings the first Monday in April. So we want to be able to get to a point where we're comfortable with what the budget's going to be, and hopefully get that approved on April 4th. You know, this will give you a little time to look this over too. We'll obviously have an updated version of some things. We'll be looking at this a little bit closer because we work on it this afternoon a little bit with the most updated numbers I can get you at your meeting time. So over the next 3 weeks, we'll continue to pound away at this. But I want to make sure that you have all the information I have, and to be able to answer any questions that you have in terms of anything we presented tonight, any questions you have about our budget, or anything, areas that you want us to look at addressing in terms of reductions, increases, those kinds of things.
Sub-pay? Sub-pay,
Yep.
I increased it.
the last time, I'm not positive, it was what, 105, you raised it to 115?
Yes, is it on the per diem sheet? What is the?
I'm in the packet now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for one.
Yep, so it'd be 115, yep,
115, what was non-certified?
105. What is it? In
What
proposed
was it
next year?
before? What is it now?
90, 100.
Yeah, I think it's 90 and 100, Mr. Conley.
90?
90 and then 100 this year.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'd like to see it left at 90, non-certified.
Are
You
we,
can look at that.
are we able to do that with the minimum wage?
That's the issue.
That's what drove, the minimum wage law drove that increase. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have. I gotta look to see if that 90 covers minimum wage
Yeah.
for the day.
Kelly, you said health insurance is 6%, is that, is this, a real figure, or is this just a guesstimate? That's the figure they gave us?
That's real.
What was that, Carson?
The $90
Health insurance,
Oh, okay.
6%, I wanna know if that was a guess or if that was a real figure.
Minimum wage right now is $13.20.
1320.
Yeah, and
So-
the $90 makes it $14.80. So next year's minimum wage increase, it would be under, we would not qualify.
So if they move that in January, we'd have to move it.
We'd have to move it maybe.
Then I think certified should go a little higher.
Where we at, 115, 105.
115%.
That's what we're proposing, 115, okay. Well,
It's been $10.
Could be
It was
a-
190. It was 90 for uncertified and 100 for
What do you think of Mr. Conley?
Well, I just feel that a $10 difference between a certified teacher who's gone to school,
Yep.
And you said.
got their degree, and now we can just pick up anybody off the curb and say, yeah, you can be a substitute, come on in.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna pay you $105 a day. No, that doesn't set well with me.
I think,
That's the old school in me.
I think any increase that you wanna have potentially attracts
Certified
somebody
teachers
that's
are-
out there. I mean, they do.
I know it's hard to get them, but
Yep.
we've got some.
Are you thinking like 125, Mr. Conley? Like $10 more?
125 would be good. Maybe you'll get some more certified teachers.
Is there anybody opposed to that?
It's always been a $10 difference.
It's always just, yeah, we just increased them that way, yeah. But I mean, 125 certainly potentially attracts somebody to the North Country, as they call it. So it's not gonna have a huge budgetary impact, because I haven't had a lot of certified teachers apply to do that. But if we do, yeah, but if we do, maybe you can hold them here. Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's,
6.5 hour day.
so, is everybody okay with me updating that to 125?
And then the non is gonna be what?
I'll keep the non as
105.
the same at the 105.
Oh,
That'll cover our minimum wage for a non-certified, but it'll create a little $20 gap. We're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll update that chart for next month and update it.
Kelly, do you know what the percentage on this budget is for salary increases?
I do not, but I can get that for you.
Thank you.
I don't have it separated out by percentage.
So DJ, I think what you're trying to do is just for us to be cognizant of 0%, that we also have to kind of monitor over the years, because we don't want to be in a year where we didn't do raise tax increases, and then all of a sudden one year we're doing a huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's exactly, so what I don't want, and times are different, it's not, I don't wanna compare apples to apples by any means, but, I don't want you to ever, and I don't wanna be a part of that, where you ever get yourself in a situation where you've seen in different schools or something bad happens, where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, we gotta go out and get 14 this year, or something like that, like, and I'm not gonna name districts, but you've read in the paper where that's happened. Well, what they've done to get to that point, some of it's probably not self-inflicted, but some of it is. Some of it's self-inflicted over time, and then all of a sudden, you're trying to reach out to the public and say, you need to create all this revenue. And I don't ever want that, on my record here, and I don't want you guys having those tough discussions about those things. And some of you have been in here when those were had. I mean, I was in here as a principal when they were had 1 year, what are we gonna jump to? And if you look at historic tax increases. Right now, there's other funding, so it's not apples to apples. But I do want you to understand, you do have a revenue stream within 10 years that will be gone. And you also want to make sure that you're accumulating revenue to keep up with inflation in the cost of running a school district, so.
But I'll argue that's why I was asking these questions. In our future, our next 5 years, what teachers are we gonna be adding, or are we gonna be losing, or
Yeah.
you start losing a teacher and you start losing $25,000 a year for health insurance and all that stuff, that starts bringing things down too. Our enrollment is down, 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 so at some point, this ought to balance off and start going down, down, down too. We've got a lot of taxpayers out there, and there's a lot going on in the world right now.
And the salary, as you mentioned, I mean, I'll joke about it, but, it's not glitter, it's salaries. And you're right with that, you know what I mean? So we're not talking about, cutting down on paper and glitter.
That's right, salary,
Get to have
what percentage of this budget is increases because of salary?
Yep, and those of you, those of you that were on, and Mr. Marco was, when we were trying to make cuts, this was double digit years ago now, 11, 12, when we had to make cuts, those were really tough discussions at these tables, but the only way to get to the number you wanted to was there, so that's where the numbers lie, in the salary. So balance with what I'm saying is balance with what he's saying, where are we with salaries, and how do we balance that along with revenues that we're getting, and, that's the other part of this for sure.
Anything else for the budget?
All right.
So you'll have some time to look through that. I'll provide updates as I can with this. April 4th, we'll come back and hopefully hash this thing right out. We'll have final numbers, tweak some things, and hopefully we can get that thing approved on April 4th, and we'll get it out to the voters. So thank you for your process up until now, and I'll look forward to further input.
Thank you. All right, capital project update.
Okay, so I again gave you a sheet tonight. I normally like to get this to you ahead of time as well, but we had a big meeting on Thursday, and then Friday we had our engineers on site for the whole day. They didn't even get through everything on Friday, through Friday night. They were here quite late actually. Friday afternoon anyway, quite late. But I do want to get an update to you just to kind of give you a timeline and where we're going with this. So a couple things, just to kind of reiterate the timelines and simplify that. We're looking for the state education department to approve our project this fall, which means we're in that design phase still of what we're doing, and that's what the engineers are here for right now, where we know where we're saying we're replacing exhaust fans. They're here now looking at, okay, what specific exhaust fan are we replacing here, so that we can start to iron out these dollars and cents for each one of these and so forth. So that's what's going on right now. Specific items, specific replacements, making sure that we're covering all aspects of the scope that was approved by the voters, from the pool to the exhaust fans and all the things that are associated with not only the federal funding, but the approval of the proposed project itself by the voters. We're looking at this December or January, when we go out to bid on this project, okay? So over the next few months, we're in March right now, we get into April, May, we're gonna start to really look at the scope, look at specifics, and we're gonna have some decisions to make. And I can say that tonight, as we look at the project and look at the budget that we're working with, and when you're looking at 7.9% inflation and we're starting to plug in 8% escalation costs into a project, numbers that we were looking at originally, and I don't have those yet, but I just giving you a heads up, that there's gonna have to be some decisions made in what we're going to do to keep this in the same scope that was approved, but maybe in a little bit of a lesser phase. So we're gonna talk about all those kinds of things, and then once that's set, over this summer, we'll get that sent in, and then get that approved in the fall and get our bids out, and then the construction would start in 2023. So, most of that work would be not this summer coming, but the following summer is where you'd see that work being done. I mentioned a couple different things here. Well, let me back up a second here. Our next meeting is going to be March 31st on Thursday to talk a little bit more about this. National Grid and the engineers are expected to be back maybe once before April break, but definitely over April break to complete their review of everything that's in here. So I won't have all the details probably for April 4th, but definitely for the May meeting, we'll have a pretty big capital project meeting. And keep in mind, we can have, as we get closer, we can have separate meetings too. We can schedule a special meeting just to discuss projects. So as we get there, if we need that, just keep in mind, it's not always gonna have to be necessarily on that particular thing. But anyway, I wanna just go through this a little bit on the update. The project scope, as I mentioned, LaChase is updating all the scoping documents, reflecting estimates. I talked about the escalations and the inflation that's going on. So, you know, again, just like all of you are doing with your budget, they're trying to estimate, you know, what's this stuff gonna cost when it goes out to bid at that point in time. Synthesis is doing the drawings right now, and as they get more information from all their consultants, those are all being submitted and sent over to LaChase. Everything that's done, every step, you know, brings those dollars closer to where we need to be. As soon as the snow melts, and the way the weather looks, it sounds like sooner than later, we will have surveyors out here. Basically, they'll be out back looking at the elementary wing and the bleacher stuff that we have in this project over on the east end in the pad for the fuel storage replacement, so they'll be doing some survey work outside. We had our theatrical specialist that came in that worked with Synthesis to look at our lighting in the auditorium. Ms. Crossett, our music director, worked with them that day as they developed some of the costs and the designs for the updates in the auditorium lighting. As I mentioned on Friday, Friedman and Fisher, that's the engineering consultants that were here. They were here from first thing in the morning till late afternoon Friday, and they still didn't finish everything. So they're at least coming back for one more full day, if not 2 days, to go through, and they are, you know, this is hours in the boiler room, hours below the pool, those kinds of things, you know. So I want to thank Mr. Anderson and Ms. Crossett for their time with that. I did a little bit at the end of the day, but these guys spent a lot of time underground with them. The hazardous materials, we haven't talked a lot about that yet, but as you look at any project, and those of you that have been involved, the hazardous materials, any of the areas that we're going to be looking at in terms of where we're going to have hazardous materials removed, you know, we're going to have that as part of the budget. In terms of the project, you have to budget for those types of things, and anything that comes up or that we want to get taken care of in terms of hazardous materials is really important in this project. I want to also say, in talking to the engineers, and part of the reason Mr. Anderson was part of this as well, really want them to take a close look this time at this, because this is so heavily mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. Inevitably, I'll probably miss something, but I'm trying not to miss a thing that's aging in here for you, because I think it's really, really important that these nuts and bolts that we've been talking about get taken care of, and that everything that you know, needs to be repaired or replaced gets replaced. So if I don't want to miss a jet on the pool, I don't want to miss anything like that. I want, you know, our goal is to upgrade the pool area. Then I want to make sure we don't have, you know, a whole bunch of new stuff and a couple things that are still rusted out. So they're spending a lot of time on all this stuff. I mentioned the National Grid. They're supposed to be here. Matt LeClaire is the consultant that works with them through Synthesis. Again, we're looking for energy savings. So as we start to cut down the grid savings, some cooperative purchasing that might be done, maybe we purchase some things on our own rather than having the the consultant fees and different things that go into those incidentals and things that go in. We're going to try to balance, because we want to get as much as we can in the project, but I think inevitably we're probably going to have to look at a few things and say, you know what, this probably can't go, but we'll see. And the goal, I wrote in here, is to have an updated project budget by either the April 4th or the May. I wrote this today, but I'm thinking more we're looking at May, just in the time I need for them to get here and look at more things. The April break, I mentioned they'll be here for, and then, you know, one of the things that we'll start to look at too is say, okay, what are some maybe alternates or add alternate things that we can have on there that if the bids come in well, then we're going to do them. If they don't come in well, we're not going to do them. So those are all parts of the end discussions on the capital project. But again, that's our update for today. Things are moving along, and we're still on schedule. And as we get into, especially from May, June, and into July, that's going to be where we're going to have some real involvement and finalization of things and get it out there. So that's where I'm at today with the capital project. Again, the other piece of it is that we're isolating what items in there will fit into the federal money portions of it, which is about 1.5 or 1.6 million dollars that we're going to be able to allocate toward this project in federal money. Which items on here will qualify for that, and putting as much as we can into that. There's no worry with that because we've been approved for it, first of all. Second of all, we have more items that would be approved for that than we actually have money for. So even if certain things don't come in, we'll still be able to maximize that federal funding. Questions for me or Ms. Cross on the capital project at this point?
Gym lighting still in this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's the other thing, making sure we're not missing any of these old, lack of energy efficient lighting that we have, that we get all energy efficient lighting. That's all part of the grid and things that we're doing here, so. The abatement crew? Okay. So, I didn't know that. The abatement crew, the people that are gonna come and look at hazardous, are gonna be here Thursday? Oh, did they? Okay. They'll be here Thursday to look at hazardous stuff, Thursday as well.
Any other questions on the capital update? All right, COVID-19 update.
So, probably the best COVID-19 update I've been able to give in a couple of years here. The masks are gone. We've gotten as close to normal as we can get. We still have some, we're still doing some work with cafeteria spacings that need to be as part of the new regulations and so forth. But in general, our classrooms are spaced. It hasn't been a long time without masks, but I have not had any increase. In fact, it's been very sparing in terms of positives. We've had a few, but no spread or anything like that. No sign that we have issues with it. I'm not gonna lie, it's awesome being in school right now without the masks on, and everybody, it looks normal, everything looks normal. We had full crowds here for events. We had full crowds for the music events. So far, so good. Hopefully that continues, and as we get into the rest of the year, some other things that we might be able to, get a little bit more leeway on, especially as the weather gets better. And then if things continue to progress this way, hopefully by September, we're back to our normal situation. So I don't have a lot because everybody kind of was waiting on the mask update. That's really what happened, and it's been great here so far. So, any questions for me on anything related to COVID? I'm gonna start to be happy if it's not on the agenda. I think it's been on the agenda for every day, for every month, for so yeah.
2 years of the day.
Yeah, so.
All right, we have one additional discussion item, which is the nomination for the Boces Board of Ed. We have an open seat, so looking to nominate a candidate who may want to be on the ballot. Do we have to, if she agrees, then I nominate her to the ballot.
Well, anybody, just like anything else, you can make a nomination. Anybody can make a nomination for it, from our board, for our representation.
I nominate Janine.
Second.
Well, yes.
Does anybody else want to be on the
Anybody
ballot?
can do it.
There could be 4. Anybody else?
Carson, did you want to?
No.
No? Peter?
That would be fun.
Thanks, DJ.
Think about
Alright.
it.
So motion that we will nominate Janine Lynch for the Boces board to represent our school district. We need a motion.
You got your motion.
I need a motion first and then,
Who's the second?
oh, second is Sarah, all in favor? Okay.
Congratulations, she'll be on the ballot.
Announcements, April 4th is our next board meeting at 6. That's earlier, but we agreed to do that because of the Easter April recess. April 7th is the annual Boces virtual meeting.
I'll send that information out to all of you, and you will need one of you to be there for that to vote. You'll actually be included, so if it's going to be Sean again, I'll
I can
include
do
you
it,
as the
it's in
vote.
my calendar.
So if Sean's going to be your voting person for that, then the rest of you, I'll just send the information if you want to listen to the presentation. It'll essentially be what you saw tonight. So.
And then the May 9th is 6th is the public hearing, and then our regular, meeting, and then the budget vote is May 17th, 12 to 8. Any?
We have April 20th, we have to have a budget vote.
Yep, that's not on your.
Yeah, April
discussion.
20th.
Boces, right?
Yeah, the Boces vote.
So we could talk April,
April 4th.
we could talk April 4th on that, but yeah, that's your
Cause
typically,
that's at 7 AM one.
yeah, that's typically when you come in and vote for the election. And
Don't go to camp.
No public comments, there was no questions emailed in, so a motion, anything else before we adjourn?
Somebody mentioned before, I don't know if it was Sean, bricks on the back of the wall,
Oh,
or back
yeah.
wall.
Yeah,
Has
so-
that been looked at?
Yeah, so that's part of, the appointment, that's part of this project.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing a thorough analysis of all that. Yep. What's that called? What's the terminology for that? Reappointing. Yeah,
All right, a motion to adjourn.